Most people think aim training only works if you commit to it long term like the gym, grind it daily for months, and chase scores like it's your life's purpose. That belief is exactly why most people avoid it entirely. In this video, I'm going to explain why everyone should aim train for exactly 10 hours. Not indefinitely, not obsessively, but as a focused self-experiment. More importantly, I'll show you how to structure those 10 hours so they actually translate into in-game performance and help you address your biggest weaknesses. Before we get into that though, just some quick context so you know where this is coming from. I've helped my team reach second place across all USA colleges in Valorant, reach top 300 in the finals, and won as a solo queue against full-time pro players and leaderboard stacks more than 600 times across 5 FPS titles. What I'm about to share with you isn't just theory, it's the first thing I recommend to my friends who ask me for aim advice. Let's start with the number itself, because 10 hours sounds arbitrary, but it's actually very intentional. You're probably going to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours in your favorite games over time. That's just the reality of competitive titles. So when you compare 10 hours to that total, it's almost nothing. It's a fraction of your total investment, but it has the potential to meaningfully upgrade one of the most fundamental aspects of your performance. The problem is that most players don't treat aim training like a controlled input. They either ignore it completely or go all in with no structure and burn themselves out. What I'm proposing is neither. 10 hours is enough time to generate noticeable gains, but short enough that it doesn't feel like a long-term commitment. It's a trial window that gives you real data instead of leaving you to your assumptions. Now, how you use those 10 hours matters more than the number itself. The simplest structure we can follow is 1 hour per day for 10 days. That cadence does a few important things. First, it keeps the sessions short enough that you don't burn out or lose focus. Second, it creates consistency, which is what actually drives improvement in motor skills. And lastly, it gives your brain time to adapt between sessions, which is where a lot of the learning consolidation happens. During those sessions, your goal is not to chase high scores or compare yourself to leaderboard players. That's what most people jump straight into and lose momentum. They turn aim training into another competitive environment and lose sight of what it's supposed to do. Instead, you want to approach it like a meditative, low-pressure process. You're focusing on smoothness, control, and awareness of your own movement. And when you remove the pressure to perform and break your high scores with every run, you actually give yourself space to improve. This is important because tension kills consistency. If you're constantly trying to force better scores, your adjustments become erratic and inefficient. But when you treat it as something that's supposed to be relaxing, you start building cleaner mechanics. Over the 10 hours, that translates into more reliable performance in actual matches. Developing this consistency in your aim matters far more than occasional peak moments, which is exactly what chasing high scores does. Now I have to address the biggest question people usually ask. Does aim training actually transfer into real game performance? The answer is yes, but only if you approach it correctly. Aim trainers isolate specific components of aiming, generally tracking, flicking, and target switching. And these are harder to isolate in live matches where engagements happen every few minutes. By improving those components in a controlled environment and in a condensed period, you're effectively upgrading the building blocks that your in-game aim relies on. However, the transfer isn't automatic if you treat the trainer like a separate game. The connection comes from intention. When you're practicing, you should be aware of how each skill shows up in your actual matches. Smooth tracking translates to following the movement of opponents in longer TTK games. Controlled flicks translate into fight-deciding initial headshots. And target switching translates to multi-enemy scenarios where you have to mow down the enemy team as fast as possible after a flank. When you make those connections, the improvements carry over much more effectively. This is where the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, comes in. The idea is that a relatively small amount of focused effort can produce a large portion of the results. In most real-life applications, it usually boils down to 20% of the inputs resulting in 80% of the gains. In our specific case, 10 hours of structured aim training can deliver a significant chunk of the mechanical improvements most players are missing in their main games. You don't need hundreds of hours to see benefits. You just need enough time spent deliberately working on the right things. Another critical piece of this process is benchmarking. When you start your 10-hour block by benchmarking, you're not just practicing blindly, you're observing where you struggle. Maybe your tracking is inconsistent, maybe your flicks overshoot, or maybe your micro adjustments are shaky. These patterns tell you exactly where your weaknesses are. You need to use this information to decide what you need to focus on in your next sessions. And this ties directly into the theory of constraints, which is one of the most important concepts in improvement for any aspect of your life. Your performance is limited by your biggest bottleneck, not your average ability across all skills. So if your tracking is significantly worse than your flicking, improving your flicking further won't move the needle much in real games. But bringing your tracking up to par will have a significant impact. Aim training makes these constraints visible. Instead of guessing what's holding you back, you can see it in real time. That clarity is what allows you to improve efficiently, because now you're targeting the area that actually matters. Let's put this into perspective with little Timmy versus Chad. Little Timmy hears about aim training, downloads a trainer, plays a few scenarios, and gets frustrated that his scores are low. and quits after 2 sessions. From his perspective, aim training just doesn't work, but in reality, he never gave himself enough time or the right approach to see results. Chad treats it differently. He commits to the entire 10-hour framework, 1 hour a day for about 2 weeks. And he also does not pressure himself to perform. Instead, he pays attention to how his aim feels, where he struggles, and how it evolves over time. By day 4 or 5, he will start noticing small improvements, and by day 10, his control is noticeably better, and more importantly, he understands his weaknesses much more clearly. When Chad goes back into ranked, he's not suddenly a different player overnight, but his baseline has shifted. His aim is a little bit more stable, his confidence in fights is higher, and he's making fewer mechanical errors in critical moments. That's the kind of improvement that compounds over time. The key takeaway here is that 10 hours isn't the end goal, it's a checkpoint. It gives you enough exposure to decide whether aim training is something you want to continue, and it gives you measurable improvement without requiring a massive time investment. If you enjoy it, you can keep going. If you don't, you still walk away with better mechanics and a cleaner understanding of your aim. There really is no way that you don't walk away as a better player by the end of it. If you watch this far into the video, please consider subscribing. Currently, 95% of my viewers don't bother subbing to the channel, and every sub really means a lot for a channel of my size. Thanks a lot for considering. The reason everyone should aim train for exactly 10 hours is because it removes the 2 biggest barriers: uncertainty and commitment. You're not guessing whether it works, and you're not signing up for an endless grind. You're running a focused experiment that fits into the time you were already going to spend gaming anyway. If you approach it correctly, those 10 hours will give you tangible improvements, expose your biggest weaknesses, and make your in-game performance more consistent. And once you experience that shift, you'll understand that improvement doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing the right things, even in small amounts, and doing them with intention. I'll put in a few before and after clips of my own aim so you can see what a few hours of aim training can do to transform your skills. Enjoy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm trying a new editing style with this, so please let me know in the comments if you like this or not. Thanks for your input, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.